Hi guys, so welcome to the part 2 of Univariate plot. We're going to be looking at example 2 of Univariate plot. We're going to be looking at box plot. So this is what we're going to be looking at, box plot. This is a univariate plot helping us to see a single distribution. Now, box plots displays distribution, spread, and outliers of a variable. So let's look at this distribution, spread, and outlier of a variable. Now it's important for us to understand what univariate plot helps us do, because with univariate plots we understand underlying structures, patterns, and characteristics of the data of that variable we're looking at. So we're looking at a histogram, we're looking at a box plot, right? And again, really interesting thing, with box plot you can do data exploration, and one really interesting thing is outlier detection. So today we're going to visualize again. We're going to visualize, and starting from the last one we did, continuing from the last one, we looked at the tips data set. That's what we're using here. Now, if you're just looking at the tips data set for the first time, please check out the initial video, right? The initial video helps us put the tips into perspective. So we're looking at this data here, right? So we've seen this. Now the question is, how do we know if we have outliers in our data set, right? How do we know? Right, to that end, we can look at distribution, spread, and the outlier of a variable, and we will look at the total bill. Do we have outliers in this total bill? Well, to do that, we have to plot the box plot. Now, it's pretty simple. From what we have done earlier on, if we look over here, you can see that we did the histogram. Here, we do a box plot. First, I start off with sns.boxplot. Then if I check the documentation, you can see that we're going to be looking at the data here. So what data are we looking at? So we can just basically put it into X and just say, look, what we want is tips, and we're looking at total bill. So the question is, does total bill have an outlier in it? Then we have plt.title, and what we're going to say is we're going to look at a box plot of total bill. Then here, of course, we're going to put just one label because we are looking at the box plot. So you're going to see how it is. We're going to look at the X label. And so we'll call this total bill. Because that's what is going to be on the X-axis. And then we're going to render. Now with this, you can see now we have the distribution of the bills here. Now, if you look in between here, this is the middle ground of our data here. Is that the middle ground of our data? If we do a summary statistic, and the summary statistic is typically looking at our data to see some parts of our data from like the mean, the mode, the median. If we do a summary statistic, of tips, we look at tips, and what we're looking at here is total bill, and we say dot describe, which we can use, and it shows us the mean, right? You can see typically you can see the distribution. We have the mean, we have the minimum, and the minimum is, if you look over here, the minimum is 3. You can see that it starts over here. If we look at the maximum, we have 50. You can see that around here, this is what we're looking at. Then we can see the distribution, the various distributions, and of course we're going to see the middle ground here, which is the 50 percentile here. And you can see over here we have the 50th percentile. You can see it over here, 17, right? Of course over here you can see the distribution of the mean. This is the one that's often, influenced by outliers, right? But again, what this does is that it shows us extremes. We have it shows us our extreme data, the minimum and the maximum, and it shows us whiskers over here. Now these whiskers tell us, you can see over here, these whiskers tell us that we have outliers here. So that means a whole lot of the stuff on our data is around this area to this area, right? And we start to see some changes here, but there are things happening over here. If we go over here, you can see that it starts to show where the data is, starting from over here basically to over here, before it starts to drop down off to 30, right? And the same thing is happening over here, but this time around, this box plot is telling us, well, let us look at our spread and also the outliers of the variable. So that's what the box plot looks like. Pretty simple to visualize. But again, remember, we talked about the Anscombe's quartet, which told us not to look at summary statistics on face value or at face value. And so we do that by visualizing. So here is Boxplot. Take your time, watch it again, look at how we create this, and then you get used to it. Like, subscribe, and share.